Welcome to another hour of CBS Sports HQ. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Pete Prisco. It is Tuesday, so you know what that means. Pete Prisco's latest power rankings are up and live. And Pete, I want to ask you, we saw another wild week. How hard was it to compile the rankings this week?
It's starting to, thin out a little bit at the top, I think. I think we have a clear line of who the top teams are, at least for right now. But there are a lot of middle class. There's a big middle class in the National Football League, and that's the way the NFL wants it. They want everybody involved as late in the season as they can. So I understand it's good for the league. It makes doing power rankings, like you said, tough to do.
Yeah, let's take a look at the top 10 teams. Not a lot of change in the top 10. Chiefs and the Bengals moving up. Good to see the Dolphins back inside the top 10. They get Tua back inside the top 10 there. Eagles remain number 1. Bills unchanged at number 2. Then you have the Chiefs moving up to number 3. Giants, Cowboys, Jets, and Titans also unchanged. In terms of teams 11 through 20, lots of teams in decline here. You look at all those red arrows pointing down. New England, the Chargers, both tumbling more than a few spots. Biggest riser of the week in this group, the Seattle Seahawks up 9 places to number 12. And teams 21 through 32, Chicago on the rise here after their win on Monday Night Football. Denver also in decline yet again as you take a look at teams 21 through 32. Panthers, though, did move up 1 spot. So that's nice to see. All right, let's discuss this number 1 team in Philadelphia. And to do that, let's welcome in Bryant, McFadden. B-Mac, the Philadelphia Eagles go to the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. The Pennsylvania Derby coming up. Do you think that Philadelphia is going to be 7-0 and atop the power rankings again next week after that one?
Unfortunately, yes. I do believe the Philadelphia Eagles, will be undefeated after, facing off against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We saw the game Sunday night, Pittsburgh versus the Miami Dolphins. Offensively, there's still some concerns. Kenny Pickett showed some flashes here or there, but yet and still made some rookie mistakes. Defensively, left a lot of plays on the football field against the Miami Dolphins. And let's keep it real. In totality, the Eagles, they have a better offense than what the Pittsburgh Steelers saw this past Sunday night. So I think it will be a long Sunday for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a good Sunday for the Philadelphia Eagles.
I didn't believe he actually would say that because last week after Miami beat Pittsburgh, I saw about our social team sent out about 20 clips of B-Mac saying, the Steelers should have won the game. The Steelers should have won the game. The Steelers should have won the game. Oh, they should have won the game. If they only caught the interceptions, they would have won the game. B-Mac, I know it hurts when they lose, but come on.
Those missed interceptions, clearly, if they came down with 2 of those plays, right? I think the Steelers would have been on the opposite end of that loss, meaning winning that ball game, because in both situations, all 4 situations, I think it was, they kicked field goals, if I'm not mistaken, at least 2 of those missed opportunities. So when you leave plays like that on the football field, nothing good happens for you moving forward. And we saw that. Pittsburgh, if you catch 2 of those interceptions, you take points away from the Miami Dolphins and potentially put points on the scoreboard for yourself.
And this is one of those few games this week where you have double-digit favorites. Philadelphia Eagles, double-digit favorites as they go into that game against Pittsburgh. Pete, when you look at the Eagles, how long do you see them remaining an undefeated team?
Well, they'll be undefeated this week. They're a good football team. You look at that schedule, and at the Texans, yes. Versus the Commanders, yes. On Monday night, particularly at the Colts,
yes.
Yes. Versus the Packers, probably. Against the Titans, that'll be a tough game. But yeah, then you get the Giants. That's a tough game. It's always a tough game for them. By the way, one last thing about the Steelers and Miami game. It would have been over if they kicked the field goal when they were supposed to early in the game. That's a whole. Me and B-Mac had a nice conversation off air about that. About these teams not kicking field goals. It's okay to take a field goal once in a while, guys.
Eagles have won nine straight home games against Pittsburgh, and based on the schedule, they could be 12-0 by the time they face the Giants. So
yeah, and then those 72 Miami Dolphins, who they honored last week, will be sweating and ready to pop that champagne.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings coming off their bye week, but Pete, punishing them anyways for being off last week. You move the Chiefs up, you move the Vikings down. Not their fault that they're off on the bye week, but there they go to 4th place. Hang on before we get B-Mac. What's Pat P going to think about that?
Pat's going to be fired up. I get a chance to do our podcast with him tonight, and I will let Pat know Pete decided to move them down. And we actually had dinner on his bye week, and we talked about the recognition they're starting to get, some of the respect that they're starting to get because of how well they've played. But I can say this, Pete. I understand your logic. I understand your reasons in having the Minnesota Vikings drop one spot because that was an impressive win by the Kansas City Chiefs. Going on the road, you look at everything that was involved in that ball game, making it a bigger deal, adding Christian McCaffrey. You talk about getting healthier. The 49ers on the defensive side, having some of their starters back. It didn't matter. Pat Mahomes just had an unbelievable day, 4 passing touchdowns. Their offense just dominated, not to mention their defense did as well. So I see your logic. I have no issue with what you did because that was the most impressive win, in my opinion, the entire weekend.
Yeah, by the way, Jeremy says, oh, well, Pat Pete going to tell him Pat Pete? He's the Viking rat. That's who BMAC is. He tells Pat Pete and every other Viking everything I do. Oh, he moved you out of the top 100 list. What do you think about that? And they try and put me on the spot. And what do, BMAC? I stand my ground. I hold my ground. So he's the rat. He's the Viking rat. Whatever I do when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings, he's the rat. By the way, I have purple on today, don't I?
I like it. I'm just a good communicator. I like being.
No, you're the rat.
Being transparent. I like being transparent. That's all I like doing. Just being transparent.
I'm gonna get one. You know what? You go to a hockey game. Sometimes they throw rats on the
Florida,
ice. On Florida's games, I'm gonna get one of those for you. You dirty rat. You rat. But you know what happens to rats and snitches, don't you, B-Mac?
Okay, I understand. I just want to keep you in good favor.
You know I'm kidding.
I just want to keep you in good favor with the Vikings because we're slated to go back there in January, right? So I just want to make sure they treat you like family.
Yeah.
Chiefs were off Bills were off this past week. If that win was so impressive by the Chiefs, then why not move them up to 2 for a week?
Why not?
The Bills off.
The Bills beat them.
So
at their place.
Yeah,
they're better. They're a better football team.
Okay.
The Bills might be the best team, but you got to put the Eagles in the 1 spot.
Okay. All right. So
agreed.
Okay. So Chiefs are up. Vikings are down 1 into 4th. And the Miami Dolphins. We want to take a look at the Miami Dolphins. Second biggest movers this week, up 6 places, back in the top 10. How much better is this team with Tua at the control?
They were much better in the first quarter. He settled in and didn't play very well after that. But I'm going to criticize the offensive game plan here. Had they kept throwing it early in that game's over. The Steelers allowed them to do so many different things, and they didn't adjust, and finally they adjusted, but I don't care. It was too late. I think if Miami had continued to throw the ball, they started running the ball, and they did some good things running the ball, and you heard Mike McDaniel explaining why he wants to run the ball. But if I'm playing the Steelers that day, and I have those track guys outside, and Tua's getting hot early, I'm throwing the football. There was no pass rush. Pittsburgh didn't rush the quarterback. He could have stood back there all day. I didn't understand why they changed what they did early in the game, because if they didn't, they would have blew them out that night.
I agree with you, Pete. I think when you look at those wide receivers, anytime you have an opportunity to showcase their skill set, you do so. That's the strength of their offense, throwing the football to those track runners they have on the perimeter. But they rose 6 spots, Pete, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Wow, I was surprised to see such a significant rise for the Miami Dolphins because it wasn't like they just dominated the game. I mean, it was a 1-possession game to say the least. And I agree with you. McDaniels should have kicked the field goal, go up 9 points, game over. He didn't. Pittsburgh got a big stop. They weren't able to cash in, but a six spot leap for the Miami Dolphins, just beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not too quite sure about that.
Well, they've been playing with the backup quarterbacks. I mean, a couple, okay? So you give them an out on that. Plus, there's a lot of teams that lost in front of them. And which are the teams behind them right now in that little area? Would you move up in front of them right now, B-Mac?
I think just based on the win, how impressive the win was, Cincinnati had a better win against Atlanta. Atlanta was 3-3, right?
They did.
Yeah, I think Seattle had a more impressive win against the Chargers. And you
do you think Seattle's better? Do you think Seattle's better than Miami?
Healthy? No, I wouldn't say that. But I'm saying this particular week they had a more impressive win.
No, I'm not going to deny that. I'm not denying that. But Miami's losses came when they had no quarterback. They didn't have their starting quarterback, and so you got to factor that in as well. That's why Miami's up where they're at.
Okay.
What about Mac Jones getting benched? I mean, just talking about that, let's talk about the Patriots. Do you think that it's time to put that debate to rest, or do you think that he should be off, or he should be the starter, or Bill should come out and say who the number 1 is?
If you don't have If you, like they say, if you have two quarterbacks, that means you have none. You have zero.
All right.
No quarterback. So personally, I would play Mac Jones. I think he deserves to be on the field. I don't think he's what everybody thought he was a year ago. Remember this time last year, oh, he's Tom Brady. What a deal they have for drafting him where they got him. No, he's not that. But he's better than Bailey Zappi. I'm sorry. Bailey Zappi is a nice backup quarterback in the National Football League, and we have this infatuation with backup quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, remember when BMAC was saying Cooper Rush should stay on as the starter in Dallas at one point? Everybody loves the backup quarterback. BMAC's one of those guys that falls into that trap.
Wow. You just threw me under the bus for no reason. All I said was if Cooper Rush leads the Cowboys to a victory over the Eagles, you might have something to consider moving forward. Not saying it would be a quarterback controversy, but let's keep him in there since he's the hot man. That's all I said. Cooper Rush is not better than Dak Prescott. I never said that. and I agree. Bailey Zappi, it was a good feel-good story. He's not better than Mac Jones, but I will say this. I felt like Bailey should have gotten a start last night against Chicago. That's what I felt. And we saw they inserted him into the lineup. It was a little too late.
Yeah, a little boost inserted into the lineup, but then came back down to earth very quickly.
You are what you are in this league. Ultimately, it shows up. You are what you are.
Yeah.
Every time. You can have this 2-game stretch where you look like you're something. Ultimately, you become what you are. You are what you are. Never forget it.
Yeah, the funny thing is that when he comes in and he gets them the 14 points, puts them in front, everybody on social media is putting up the Bledsoe Brady memes, and then by the end of the game, those have gone quiet. Pete Prisco, Bryant McFadden discussing Pete's latest edition of the Power Rankings. We're making our way through the top movers and shakers. That Dolphins-Lions game coming up this week, one of the games that we're going to have for you on CBS this weekend. We also have two other AFC teams squaring off as the 5-2 Jets welcome the 3-4 Patriots. Although who's going to be the starting quarterback, we don't know. Late game has the Titans on the road in Houston as 1.5-point favorites versus the Texans. All right, we've all been marveling at the play of the Giants and their 6-1 start to the season, but what about them Seahawks? Weren't they supposed to suck this year? They make a big jump in the power rankings, as we've already alluded to. We're going to chat about that coming up next. Coming into this season, the NFC West was all about the Super Bowl champion Rams and the challenging 49ers. But through 7 weeks of the 2022 season, it's all about the Seahawks. They topped the division at 4-3. But, granted, it's a slim lead. Rams, Niners, and Cardinals sitting just a game back, 3 wins apiece there. You see the division odds, plus 550 for the Seahawks to win that division. CBS Sports HQ, Jeremy St. Louis alongside Pete Prisco. Bryant McFadden is also with us. So Seahawks, the biggest risers in Pete's power rankings this week, up 9 places to 12th. So Pete, are you convinced by the Seahawks after that 14-point win over the Chargers?
They're an interesting team. You go down there and they dominated the game. It wasn't just like they squeaked out a victory. They dominated in all facets of the game, and that's usually a sign of a team that's pretty good. Now, the Chargers have their own issues, including run defense, and we saw Ken Walker go nuts for 168 yards and 2 scores. Geno Smith, again, played good football. The defense is getting better. They've had a fantastic draft. If you look at their draft, both tackles are rookies. They're both starting. The corners, they got 2 corners in the secondary, Woolen and Bryant playing right away as rookies. They've had an outstanding draft class, and of course, Walker leads the whole thing. So I kudos to Pete Carroll. Maybe he knew a lot more. He and John Schneider knew a lot more about Russell Wilson than everybody else did. And they sent him pedaling. They're set up for the long haul. And I'll tell you what, this team is interesting this year. Big game this week with the Giants. And oh, by the way, Giants 5.7 per rush on defense allowed. Same as the Chargers. We saw what Walker did to the Chargers last week. We saw what the Jaguars did running the football last week with ETN. This could be another big game for Ken Walker this week.
Yeah, one of the better feel-good stories in the National Football League. Pete Carroll has done a great job coaching. They've done a great job bringing in young talent. We've been highlighting the New York Jets, their rookie class, deserving so because they had so many rookies making big-time contributions to their success. But I'm right there with you, Pete. I think the Seattle Seahawks, you're talking about hitting in the draft. That's what they've done. And that's what they're currently doing based on the success they're having currently. You look at the tackles. You talked about the tackles. Kenneth Walker, remember, he was injured. Now he's healthy. He's looked to be a dominating force. I love Tariq Woolen and the edge. He might be an all-pro type corner if he continues to play the way he's been playing. This is a great game. This is one of the bigger games, I think, no one is really talking about because both teams have exceeded the expectations. And I think both teams have a legit shot to get into the playoffs, especially the New York Giants only having one loss currently.
When you look at that game coming up, Pete, I mean, if they get that win over the Giants, how big of a leap? They're into the top 10, have to be.
Yeah, and it sets up well for them. Anytime you get a team that goes outside its own division, goes on the road, wins a game, goes home, and now has to go all the way across the country, that's tough sledding. So I think this is a great opportunity for Seattle to once again prove to people they're legitimate. And they are a legitimate team. They can throw it. Who's better right now? Geno Smith or Russell Wilson? I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. The answer to that is Geno Smith.
Geno Smith is probably a top 3, top 4 quarterback in the NFC easily right now. Right now.
Absolutely. I mean, he's having such a great start to the season. I mean, you know, that's the thing. He was an afterthought. And now he's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Certainly if you're playing him in fantasy, you're enjoying it.
Yeah, but here's what I said before. You are what you are. Is this a case that he's no longer what he used to be and he's become a really good quarterback? Or will he eventually become Geno Smith again? I mean, that's a legitimate question.
Well, we're going to find out.
If he doesn't, then kudos to Geno Smith because he's a real deal quarterback if that's the case.
Well, and as you guys mentioned, it's a legit test against the Giants this week, so it's going to be interesting to see. In Seattle, 3-point favorites are the Seahawks going into that one. All right, let's talk about the Chargers. We alluded to them. Down 4 places, one of the biggest disappointments this week. Are they one of the biggest disappointments this season, Pete?
Heck yeah. Absolutely. People were talking about them as a Super Bowl contender. Yes. They don't look like a Super Bowl contender, and I'm going to pick apart this team. Ready? They can't stop the run. 5.7 per rush. It doesn't matter who they get. They sign free agents. They draft linebackers. Derwin James comes back. Doesn't matter. They don't stop the run. 5.7 per rush. You can't win that way in the NFL. Flip it to the other side. Justin Herbert leads the NFL in passing attempts. Leads it. He's 28th in yards per attempt. Think about that. With that howitzer of an arm, something that can throw the ball from one end of the field to the other, they're 28th in yards per attempt. That should never happen. So there's a bunch of issues facing this team. Having said all that, they've had a ton of injuries. They are 4-3. They're still a threat, but they better figure out that run defense and the ability to stretch the field because they have nobody that scares you down the field. Nobody.
I can tell you this much. They're above 500, Pete, but when you watch them play, they feel like they're below 500. That's unacceptable. They have too much talent on both sides of the football to feel like a team that's below 500. And I understand people might complain, oh, no, they're 4-3. But you talked about the expectations. Yes, many people feel like this would be a legit Super Bowl caliber team. This would be a team that would be fighting for the number 1 spot in the division. And they've been the total opposite. And that man right there, he gets all the blame, in my opinion. His decision-making hasn't improved at all. The way he handles the game, management-wise, everything has been in question based on what he's done. And I feel like the fit for him and this team, along with the quarterback, is not a good fit. And because of that, we're seeing a disappointing outing so far. But there's still a lot of football left to be played, Pete. They have an opportunity to turn everything around. But I can tell you this much. If they don't make the playoffs this year, I don't care who's hurt, who's healthy. You talk about one of the bigger disappointments in the National Football League, they will be in that conversation.
Sean Payton might want to get his Chargers gear going.
No question.
Wow.
Could you imagine?
Sean Payton
with Justin Herbert?
Oh, man.
I'm all, sign me up for that. I was thinking the same thing. Could you imagine Sean Payton and Justin Herbert together?
Sean Payton is one of the best play callers ever in this league. And you put Sean Payton with Justin Herbert, woo-wee!
Wow, yeah.
Fun to watch.
They got the bye week.
Sign me up.
Bye week this week, then they're taking on the Atlanta Falcons. So, I mean, that could be a bit of a get-right spot. But, of course, the injury to J.C. Jackson, Pete, you alluded to the fact that they are hobbled right now. That's obviously going to hurt them.
He wasn't playing well because he was miscast in their defense.
I know, but still.
You sign a cover corner who plays man-press cover, and they don't use him in man-press cover guy.
Maybe he's not going to hurt them. All right. Both the Buccaneers and the Packers also falling this week. But, Pete, I mean, is there some Tampa bias here? Because, I mean, we talk about, how Seattle moved up, right, have made such a big jump. Other teams have made a big jump. Tampa Bay only falls a couple of places despite being 13-point favorites and getting blown out by one of the worst teams in the NFL.
You got to look. There's a lot of garbage teams around them. I mean, a lot of teams are struggling. You got to figure out where to slot these teams because there's a lot of bad football teams right now. Tampa Bay's bad. I'll be honest. Their offensive line is really bad right now, and Tom Brady's struggling. I go back to that game. What if Mike Evans catches that ball, hits it, and next thing you know, you're up 7-0. It changes the whole complexion of the game. They look sloppy. They don't look good on offense. The defense isn't tackling. Think about that. Carolina got rid of Christian McCaffrey and ran it and ran it and ran it. That's a bad sign for Tampa Bay. So they have to figure things out. Good news, playing a garbage division. Think about it. Who's winning in that division? There's nobody in there that's any good.
Question.
So they can figure it out and still get to the postseason and win that division.
I agree. That's the luxury that the Buccaneers have on their side. Their division is bad, so they can be a average team at best and still get a home playoff game if they win their division. Can't really say the same for the Green Bay Packers. And both teams have some concerns. I think both teams should be close to hitting that panic button. But for Green Bay, my goodness, you talk about a horrible offense. Aaron Rodgers does not look like the Aaron Rodgers we've seen in years past. His wide receivers can't create any separation. They're a run-heavy offense, which is hard to imagine with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. And their defense has been such a disappointment. I feel like their defense will be one of the best in the National Football League, up there with the likes of the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers. They've been the total opposite. They have a lot going on, and unfortunately for them, it won't get any better anytime soon because they got to travel up to Buffalo coming off the bye week. Playing against Buffalo, one of the best teams in the National Football League, they might lose, 5 in a row? Because they're currently on a 4-game losing streak, right? So the 5th one might be coming.
Well, and double-digit underdogs for the first time in Aaron Rodgers' career as they go into Buffalo. 10.5 points as of Tuesday. Bryant, McFadden, Pete Prisco getting into Pete's latest power rankings here on CBS Sports HQ. For more from B-Mac and his cousin Patrick Peterson, they're going to react to Pete dropping the Vikings on a bye week. Be sure you're checking out the All Things Covered podcast. Latest episode, JC Horn pops in to discuss his career and the coaching change in Carolina. You can download and follow All Things Covered wherever you get your podcast audio. Back here on CBS Sports HQ, if the season ended today, here's your AFC playoff picture. The Jets would be in. The Bengals would be out. They were plus 165 to win the division to start the season. That's the AFC playoff picture. Look at that. The Jets would be in there. Bills, Chiefs, Tennessee, we expect those to be there. In terms of the NFC, the Giants would be in. Packers would be out. Look at the 49ers on the outside looking in. Packers plus 158 on Caesars right now to make the playoffs. They were minus 170 in the preseason to win the NFC North. So thankfully, for some of those teams we mentioned there, the playoffs don't start today. There's still plenty of time to get things right. Jeremy St. Louis, Pete Prisco, Bryant McFadden here as we talk a little bit about Pete's power rankings, but kind of shifting it more towards kind of almost a midseason kind of playoff picture. So, I mean, Pete, can you even recall a time when the Giants and the Jets were inside your top 10?
No.
Together?
I cannot. Because the Giants have been there before, but I don't remember the Jets being in there. It's been a long time. It's been a long drought for the New York Jets. It's great for the city. It's great for the Jets fans, especially. Look, the Giants have had success. The last time the Jets had success, Joe Namath was the quarterback. Think about that. So it's great for the Jets to be there. I feel for the Jets a little bit. Just when you get the thing going the way you want it to go, you get your quarterback back. Breece Hall's running wild. He tears an ACL. Elijah Vera Tucker, who's had an outstanding season playing a bunch of different spots on the offensive line, out for the year. You're starting to see guys go down. And I always say it, the NFL season is a survival test as much as anything. But the Jets had it going, and now they're going to have to adjust on the fly. They did trade for James Robinson. I thought that was a good move for them. I'm intrigued by this team. I think Robert Saleh has this team heading in the right direction, even if it doesn't happen this year.
Yeah, and the players, they believe in Saleh and the entire staff. They play extremely hard. They remind me of the New York Giants in playing hard, play with a lot of energy, very, very physical, and just finding a way to get the job done. And yes, those injuries will be key to their success, production. Breece Hall, my goodness, you talk about a do-it-all like running back, but the speed that he showcased, he remind me a little bit of Fred Taylor.
Yes.
You talk about a bigger back that can turn a 5-yard run into a 60 or 70-yard run at any given time. That jump cut that Fred Taylor was known for, Breece had a little bit of that in his game as well, not to mention a guy that's always falling forward. That's a unique trait to have as a running back. He's out. You talk about Vera Tucker. But this is a team, I think, Pete, they will find a way to weather the storm and continue to stack wins on top of wins. Robinson was a huge plus because we know what type of back he can be when healthy. It's all about how soon will he get acclimated to their scheme offensively. But this has been a feel-good story for the National Football League. I said this a few days ago. If you're a Giants fan, it's okay to root for the Jets this year. If you're a Jets fan, it's okay to root for the Giants because it's great for the city and it's great for the NFL.
Jeremy, give B-Mac an F for copying my paper because I made the Breece Hall Fred Taylor comparison on draft night when he was sitting next to me. So F, you get an F.
Draft night?
You fail. You got caught cheating. You copied all my paper again, B-Mac. You copied all my paper
First of
again.
all, correct me if I'm wrong. I was with you on draft night. I didn't hear any Fred Taylor, Breece Hall comparison.
Yes, you did. You know I love comparing guys to Fred Taylor. And all the time I watched Breece Hall at Iowa State, it was always Fred Taylor-like, the way he played. And I said it on draft night. You're copying my paper again. But you know what? You played against Fred Taylor, so you know. You know Fred Taylor, and you know what he could do. That's high praise from you, I'll tell you that.
Jets going into the season.
It is, but I don't remember you saying that draft night. But if you want to say you said it, okay, Pete, you said it. All right.
Jets were plus 650 to make the playoffs in the preseason. Giants were plus 230, both of them sitting in a playoff position right now if the season ends today. Speaking of teams that are rising a little bit, Bengals on the rise. Another big week for Joe Burrow as they start to look like their old selves. They appear to be on the right path.
They are. It took them a while, and here's why it took them a while. When you have a big play offense, explosive outside passing game, teams adjust. They play off. We saw Patrick Mahomes. He had to deal with this. And that makes the quarterback be more patient. It makes the wide receivers be more patient. Early in the season, they struggled with it. They weren't the same offense. Well, they've adjusted, and they're back. And you look at the AFC. It's the Bills, it's the Chiefs, and the next best team is the Cincinnati Bengals. And I still think they're going to be there in the end. Joe Burrow is playing outstanding football again. They're protecting him better. The defense is good. They have playmakers all over the field on the outside. This team will be smack back dab in the middle of the whole thing again, fighting for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, right now, Cincinnati, they're the best team in the division, AFC North. They're playing the best complete football. You talk about protecting Joe Burrow. He seems to be in the groove now. His wide receivers are healthy. We know how dominant they can be. Defensively, they're just getting timely stops. They play what I call elbow defense, right? Bend but don't break. And that's what they're doing. And also, too, it's all about what's going on in your community. We really thought the AFC North would be one of the more competitive divisions in the National Football League. No, they've been inconsistent. We don't know what's going on with the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Cleveland is doing what Cleveland does. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're an afterthought currently in this moment. So it's all about Cincinnati. They just need to stay healthy. This is a huge game this Thursday against Cleveland, trying to gain some traction on the Baltimore Ravens and create separation between the Browns and the Steelers. This is a huge game for them, but I'm right there with you, Pete. I think they're playing some of their best football right now, and that says a lot based on how they started.
Yeah, it's going to be a great Monday night game. Only 3 points separating the two sides. Bengals sitting as 3-point favorites going into that one. All right, so let's talk about the Green Bay Packers and they're on the outside looking in alongside the Cardinals. Packers at 17 this week, Cardinals at 23 in terms of the rankings. Which of those teams do you think has the greater ceiling at this point, Pete?
The 49ers do. I definitely think that they can get things right because it's a talented roster. They got guys back on defense last week, and they were awful. I mean, they were terrible on defense. The Chiefs did whatever they wanted to them, but they're a better defense than that. Now you get McCaffrey, you bring him in. I wouldn't have made that trade. I've said that many a time. I think it was a bad move for them. Running backs don't decide titles, and you gave up a bunch to go get him. But adding him to the offense will help. I think this is all about Jimmy Garoppolo. How does he play? If he plays well, they're going to be a deep playoff team. If he does not, they're going to have problems. But again, we know what they want to do. They want to run the ball in that scheme, hit those passes, when you get teams flowing one way and throw them back the other way to Kittle. And then hit Deebo Samuel down the field. So we know what they want to do. They're a good team. Big game this week with the Rams. Big game.
Big game. I agree with you, Pete. I mean, you said pretty much everything. Most talented team in the division. They just got to get healthy. Eventually, when they get CMC acclimated to their offense, man, look out. They could have one of the more dominating offenses in the National Football League.
Well, they better. They're all in.
And they've owned the Rams.
Yeah.
They've owned the Rams.
Kyle Shanahan has owned Sean McVay, except when he needed to beat him when he beat him in the championship game.
Yeah.
But they better win this year because
they're all in.
They're in.
It's going to be the
Don't forget all the picks they gave away for Trey Lance, who's not even playing, and then you go give away all those picks for McCaffrey. Now, they can get some back. If D'Amico Ryans gets a job, they're going to get 2 third-round picks for him. So there's ways to get him back. I get it. I understand why they're doing it. I wouldn't have done it.
49ers was the biggest ceiling out of those 3 teams that were on the NFC playoff picture outside looking in at this point. Bryant, McFadden, Pete Prisco discussing the playoff picture in the early part of the season. Just a reminder, Pete's power rankings, by the way, are up over on CBSSports.com. In terms of the latest odds to win the Super Bowl, you have the Bills, the favorites, at plus 270. Then it is the Eagles, who have yet to lose this season, at 5-1. Chiefs, 49ers, and Vikings rounding out the top 5.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.